Hi, this is an introduction to the OPVL method and a little bit of an application to a question that I've been thinking about. So before you think about OPVL, you need a couple things. First of all, you need a research question, right? OPVL doesn't really make sense apart from a question that you're trying to answer. It can be quite general. It can be just what happened, in the past in this certain time period, I suppose, but the more specific, the better. Secondly, you need some sources. You're applying this method to some kind of a source. That's a text of some kind. It could be an interview with somebody. It could be something that somebody told you. It could be a book. It could be a magazine article, online piece. It could be an object. Okay, I'll show you a poster and a book. So here's my research question. My research question that I'm always just kind of interested in since I live in Uzbekistan is, what was life like for people who grew up when I grew up? So people my age who lived in the Soviet Union. Okay, I grew up in America. There was this sort of weird, parallel reality, this parallel economic and political system halfway around the world that we only knew a little bit about. And so in some ways, it feels like a kind of interesting life project living here in Uzbekistan to try to figure out what people would have been like, what people would have been like, but just what life would have been like, for somebody, for me, if I had grown up, in Tashkent or Moscow or Perm or somewhere instead of in this corner of the United States where I grew up. Okay, so that's my starting place. So I've got a couple of things that I found at Yangyabad that I think might give me some insight into that. So to do this, we're just going to go through the steps of OPVL and see what kind of insight it gives me about these sources and about my research question ultimately, because that's what I care about. Okay, so let's start with this poster right here. This is a traffic poster. And remember, the research question is, what was life like, let's just say in the 1980s, in the Soviet Union, specifically here in Tashkent? So does this source give us any information about that? Okay, let's do the OPVL. Let's do it in order. So origin. What can we tell about where this came from? Well, there's no artist mentioned, so we don't know who drew it. There are a couple of organizations. So maybe you Russian readers can read this. They're probably Motor Vehicle Association. And then this is an association for Автомобиль, so the fans of cars, like amateur lovers, car lovers, who put this out. It's clearly like, safety poster, right? Your standard, hey kids, don't die, walk on the zebra. It shows adults doing the same. It shows, a nice kind of cityscape. So what do we have for origins? These two organizations is what I would do. I would translate them, figure out a good translation, and figure out, maybe, write a little bit about what they were. If I had other sources, things that they produced, that would also be interesting. So I would have a sense of what they were about, why they existed. But that's okay for origins. So next thing, purpose. Purpose is pretty clear here, right? This is just, don't walk dangerously across the road for your own sake, or maybe it's really for the sake of the car drivers so they don't get in trouble having hit you. So that's the purpose. Safety, promotion of safety, right? Especially for kids, because they're sort of the foregrounded ones, I think. It'd be interesting. I don't easily read Russian, so I haven't translated this little, it looks like a reference to the actual law, like the highway code of the Soviet Union. That might tell us more whether this is more written like to cars, cars need to stop, or whether it's written to the pedestrians, you need to stay on the thing. So value, OPV, value is, what does this tell us about our research question, Soviet life in the 1980s? Right, that's what value means. So what would you say to that? If you just have a look at this, if you can see it, I hope it's well framed in the camera. What does this tell you? And at first glance, you might think nothing, really. Like, it's not really, it's very generic, nondescript. And I think that's basically right. I think it doesn't tell you a lot. To me, as an American, it tells me, okay, this kind of guy's got a suit and tie. That's not so different, from what I might have seen growing up. Women wearing, skirts. Like, again, sort of culturally, this belongs to the same world as the one I grew up in. Girls more likely to wear skirts, boys more likely to wear pants, maybe. Of course, they've got some specific hardware, like school bag, that looks all different than kids elsewhere in the world. But it's an organized city. They're trying to protect their pedestrians. They've got, trees. So it tells me a little bit. I'm actually more surprised by the similarities than the differences with what I grew up in. Let's go on to limitations. What doesn't this tell us about Soviet life in the 1980s? What would you say to that? I'll just venture to say there's a lot that it doesn't tell us, right? It doesn't say anything about, whether men wear suits of other colors than brown. We don't know that from here. In fact, there's a whole group of people that look like they're wearing brown across the street. So we can't know. Do women wear dresses in any other color than green? Is this a school uniform, or do kids just dress however they want to? And these two kids happen to be dressed that way. Do Uzbek boys wear that cap to school? I would love to know that. Actually, I have no idea, and this poster certainly does not tell me. So there's hundreds and thousands of things, right, that this poster doesn't say. But let me go on and do another source. So in this case, we've got a book written in 3 languages. So I think this is Russian, Uzbek, English, with pictures of Tashkent and Uzbekistan. So OPVL, origin. Origin means, who all worked together to produce this book. It's a picture book. So at its most extreme, it could mean everybody that worked on this, right? All of the creators that worked together to create this book. Now that's pretty extreme, and there's no way we could quite get all that information. But we can see, since it's a book, you can often find, what you need, like the basic thing. So this was published in Tashkent by a place called the Uzbekistan Publishing House in 1984. If we want more information, we can go to the title page, which in this case is in the back, and we see kind of full publishing information in Russian, including the names of the photographers and the people on the editorial staff. We could put those down if we want to. If it was me, I would actually carefully read these, which I haven't yet, just to see. I'd be interested in knowing, where are these people, just what are their names like, right? Are they Russian names? Are they Uzbek names? Are they, other kinds of Soviet names? That would be a sort of interesting thing to see who put this together. Otherwise we've got, all the information we need. We've even got an exact date of publication here. It was set the 17th of February, 1984. So origin, that's the origin. This is where it came from. P, purpose. So you've got to use some detective work in this case, because no place in this book does it tell you the purpose. Here's a nice poem, by the way, in 3 languages by Oybek. But you can just flip through and kind of look at the kind of images that the book has and make some guesses about why this book was made. So it's got nice tourist sort of images, beautiful Tashkent subway. It's got lots of technology and agriculture images. So nice symbols of, Uzbekistan and prosperity and culture, entertainment, fun, communism, and the sort of ideals of communism. That looks like a war memorial. There's also lots of pictures of revolutionary Uzbekistan, and this is Uzbekistan after the earthquake in 1966. So people reconstructing Uzbekistan. Actually, I don't know when this picture is taken, but lots of them are these are post-earthquake pictures for sure. Tashkent will soon be the best city in the country, et cetera, et cetera. So all the beautiful bits, all the beautiful kind of touristy bits of Tashkent, you can still see that, the Courage Monument after the earthquake, et cetera, cultural stuff like that. Okay, and technology. Like there's lots and lots of this stuff, female tractor driver, lots of agricultural technology, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the purpose of this book look like to you? Stop the video a second and see if you can make a guess. So I think, I'm assuming you stopped the video, the word that comes to mind first is propaganda, right? That's a little bit of an extreme word. It's not trying to trick anybody in a sense. I mean, these are all real pictures taken from Uzbekistan in probably the early 80s, but it is trying to portray a very positive view of the Uzbek Soviet Socialist Republic, both the political system, right, and the economic system. Here we've got scientists studying cotton. They're improving whatever. I love these kind of posed pictures. Here's her with a beaker. She's just about to add that to whatever. Hopefully it won't explode because he's got his face too close to. So it's a positive depiction of life, of technology, of just sort of all those things, the development of the land of the Soviet Union and specifically Uzbekistan and Tashkent. Okay, so that's what I might say for purpose. Give a positive view. Next is value. So what value does this have for me and my research question? Again, stop the video. Have a think. What does this tell me? And my answer is, despite the purpose, which is obviously to portray things in a very positive way, it tells me a lot. I feel like this is super cool to see, what they dress like, what they did, the activities that they did. Of course, even if these pictures are posed, like it shows me something about the kind of, I think it shows something about just, I don't know, what made people tick. In some ways, this looks very similar to my own kind of upbringing, right? Like, even if this is a posed picture, that kids did this, and this, you can't, there's nothing kind of fake about just how beautiful this street was. So I feel like it shows me a lot of really interesting things. And this is the section where I would give some detail, right? I would think a little bit more specifically about what aspects of life I'm interested in, and then I would just go through and find some concrete detail that this book shows me about life. Like the pioneer camp stuff. There's some, watcher, nurse woman. I think there's a lot there I could find. What are the limitations? Well, the biggest limitations are obviously that this book is trying to present things positively. And so that means that it doesn't really show what these girls, what their life is like in the winter when they don't have grapes around them. Does their house have heat? What kind of accommodation do they live in? The only housing that it shows at all is pictures of Tashkent. It seems like, apartment buildings, big, tall, kind of glorious, modern buildings. So there's a lot that it just doesn't show. And they're probably life is life, right? So pain, difficulty, anything that's kind of whatever, dirty, not working, broken, sad, all that stuff is just not in here, except, when people are overcoming it by rebuilding the city. So, so that's what I would say about limitations, that this book shows me real things about kind of life in Uzbekistan. I could give some detail on that, but then also the value of this book is real, but it's also limited by the fact that it's portraying everything positively. That's the whole purpose of this book. So that's the OPVL method as applied to a couple of sources about history. It looks a little bit different if it's applied to something like a Wikipedia article or an article in an online newspaper or something like that. But it's basically the intent is the same, and that's to figure out what's the value of this source for me and my research question, and to put that specifically into words so that you can think critically about your sources.